Hi, Kristina. Welcome to the
Hello.
podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here. Excited.
So glad to be here. There's so many questions I want to ask you, and my brain is like, where should I begin? But just to ground this conversation
Yeah.
and understand who you are at a very like rooted level, why don't you tell us about your origin story? And you could take this back as far back, like I grew up in blank, 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 and or how as recent as you want.
Oh, okay. I feel like I should. Um, Gosh, that's such a. I love the origin story. That's so beautiful. That's like a beautiful way to put it. Gosh, my story, I feel like probably centers at me being a designer. Like I've always been creative. I've always been like in design. I went to design school. So I identify myself as a designer, and most of my life I've identified myself as that. But what I've truly been like deeply practicing is how to be an artist. And that is like the term I use, combining the heart with artist and kind of mushing them together. And that's how I would describe myself, a heart-centered designer. Gosh, and I'm in California. I grew up on the West Coast, and so I've lived here like most of my life. Lived in the East Coast for a while, but definitely my roots are in California. Um, I am. My family background, I would say, is very much a mixed a mixed bag. So I'd say so. My father is Mexican and indigenous, and my mother is European, white, however you identify that. And so, yeah, like just I think there was so much beauty and so much. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, and also just like stories that were created through that like melting pot. Um, and so yeah, like that's really how like the two big things. My family, I have a large family, which has been tremendously amazing, and also like learned so much through that lens. And then this like lens of a designer, like constantly seeking inspiration and being inspired, and that being my purpose, or part of the purpose that I have in the world right now as we speak, and using that and using my designs to speak that and to speak to something deeper. I think that's ultimately what I'm doing right now and what I've always wanted to do, but never really having the courage really to like step into that. So I feel like I'm at the beginning of that, being able to have this intersection of like design and healing. And I talk a lot about archetypes. That's how I design in my work and how I work with my clients. And so really I help people find their archetypes. And so my archetypes, which are, archetypes, there's so many references to it, like Carl Jung,
Mhm.
Joseph Campbell, like there's all these great kind of lenses of how to look at archetypes. But how I see them are really just parts of our personality, our persona, that are just intertwined into what our journey is. And so for me, usually like with clients or with myself, I'll find that I'm between like 5 to 6 archetypes all
Mhm.
together all at once. And so yeah, just that's been a huge kind of part of my journey as well, is like really diving into archetypes, and that being a part of the self-discovery and just healing and infusing into my work too. So that's been extremely important. So I hope that's a little bit of my origin story. Yeah, I think I've come to the point where I'm just so open to experience, and not get in the way. Like that to me is probably the ultimate journey right now, is trying to get out of my way. Or
Mhm.
not trying, but being so purposeful in what I do, and so like going back to the practices that really honor finding my center and finding that intersection of design and healing, because that's where I feel like I do the most meaningful and creative and giving work is when I'm there, when I'm in that space of creation.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I love hearing you share about this because when I met you, and I'll just let our listeners in on how we met, was we were, well, it's interesting because I met Cinta Shay, our mutual friend, like the week before I met you. And when I met Cinta Shay, we were introduced through our other mutual friend, Anita Kopach, and I met Cinta Shay, and right away we were like stuck to each other. We were
Mm,
like two peas in a pod. We were together all night talking, and we sat next to each other at dinner, and we are just like bonding. And
yeah.
then she invited me to her BIPOC only yoga class, and she was like, "Oh my God, my friend Kristina's coming in from the Bay Area. Like, you're gonna love her. I feel like you two would get along so well." And so I show up to this yoga class, and I was like, "Oh my God, Kristina!" And I wanted to like learn more about your art because you said you were an artist, and I'm always intrigued by artists. And then you like shared your Instagram profile, and I was like, "Ah!"
That was
But
so amazing. Oh my God.
you know how some people really love celebrities? I'm like so into meeting like artists and like musicians. I'm just like, I was like fangirling. And even before I met you and put two and two together, like your art just spoke to me at like a vibrational level. It's so healing, and the way that the aesthetics and the colors, and now I
Mhm.
totally understand like the power of art because you put your own intention into it, and that kind of like radiates out into the universe that is Instagram.
Mm.
So it's so interesting like hearing your side of it because I don't
Mhm.
know, everything you make, I'm just like, yeah, this is amazing.
God, if I could just bottle that and like give that to myself when in my moments of just like, oh, this sucks, that would be amazing. My you don't suck like bottle or something. Oh, yeah, no, yeah, it was just, I'll let you continue because I don't want to interrupt it. It was such a beautiful experience.
Oh no, you can interrupt. And it's interesting that whenever I talk to artists, they always have that same self-deprecating, like humbleness about their work. And I think when we all are sharing our work, even with me to this day, like when I listen to my voice on my podcast or on my videos,
Mm.
I'm like, God, I sound terrible.
But like, is that how I sound in real life? Wow.
Wow, how annoying.
Yeah, 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 I feel that.
But I just wanted to go back to um when you realized like that you always wanted to design or be an artist, did you get
Mm.
pushback from your family?
I mean, it's funny because on my parents on one level are very open, right? They grew up in the 70s, they're from the Bay Area, definitely like, hippies, like liberals, both of them. My father was in the military, the Marines, so there's definitely like a layer of that, right? The work ethic, the militant style of like, being in life, right? And witnessing going to war and all that. But my parents were very open as far as like find something you really want to do. I think where I struggled was that, both of my parents grew up very, very poor. Um, and so there was a lot of stories around that, and that, that they've told themselves that in order, because my parents, they both were, we're a middle class family. They worked really, really hard. Like I remember hearing that word a lot, like
Mhm.
hard,
Yes.
like
Struggle,
everything,
sacrifice.
struggle, sacrifice, like work, work, work. And, I was a latchkey kid. Like my parents, like both worked, jobs. My mom more so than my father. And, yeah, that's what I witnessed, right? In order to work hard, in order to get money, you have to work hard. And so while they definitely were supportive in me kind of exploring what I wanted to do and design being something that I wanted, it was, I think, what ultimately I had to unlearn was the whole philosophy around a career, around a job, and what that meant, and that you had to sacrifice so much for your purpose, for your job, that that was a good thing. That was like the noble thing to do. um and so and I could see that even in my parents, right? My grandmother, she, on my father's side, again, like they migrated from a very poor country into the United States, were treated like very, like second, class citizen. And so it just, again, it really did embed this idea of struggle in generationally in my ancestors. And so I felt that growing up. And so immediately, whenever I'd have a job, even when it was like my first job, it was just something in me. I worked, I took on more hours, like it was definitely this like worth ethic that I feel like I definitely absorbed from my parents. So they were definitely supportive, but it was like, well, how much money are you making? And
Mhm.
are you making enough? And
Mhm.
you have to work hard in order to be successful and be, all of these things. And I saw how much they sacrificed, especially my mother, how much she sacrificed of herself in order to fulfill that job. And again, it wasn't like it was what she wanted to do. Like, if I look at both my parents' work, I mean, my father more so because he's definitely a plant. Like he doesn't know it, but my father is like a plant medicine guru. Like he has that DNA embedded in him, right? And so he had this job as a groundskeeper, but my father, he so loves being outside. And so while he had this job that, didn't necessarily describe it that way and it wasn't function like that, like he definitely, there was something about his purpose being a little bit more like narrow, and where my mother was like, I have to provide, I have to, be the source for my family. And so she definitely self-sacrificed, in order to codependency, I would say, like codependent relationship, right, where you're constantly doing things for others but not doing it for yourself. So I feel like that was definitely a story that was through that side, um, as well. So yeah, they always came to like all my crazy graduations, whether, I wanted to be, because I went to school for fashion design, then I'm like, and then I went to school for textile design, so I definitely switched. And they were never like, oh, but they were more of like, Kristina, you just got to get a job. A job is going to mean everything. So that was really the kind of, you know, energy I grew up around.
Is your mom a Pisces? I feel like we have the same mom.
Oh my God, no, they're both Capricorn.
I was gonna
They're
say, is
like,
your dad an earth sign? Like,
yeah, they're both Capricorn rising and Capricorn. Like I think they're dual Capricorn. And my brother, I believe, is also a Capricorn. So I'm like the only crazy
I see.
Aquarius Pisces
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah, my mom is a Pisces sun and a Capricorn moon. So
Mhm.
what you just described about your mom was my mom as well. Like she definitely sacrificed and like gave up a lot for us and
Yeah.
sometimes complained about it, but but one of the things that she tells me now when I talk about like the past, because I wanted to go to RISD for college, Rhode Island
Yes,
School
yeah.
Design, and my parents didn't like that idea. They were like, if you go to a liberal arts college in New York, we'll pay for it. So obviously, like, what am I gonna do, right? I'm gonna like
Yeah. Yeah.
take that
Yeah.
offer. And I always like resented my parents about that for like since last year, up until last year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I asked my mom about that, and she said, Well, if you really wanted to do it, then you would have just done it, but clearly you weren't confident enough about it. So, like, what are we talking about here? And I think about that a lot. Like, in the one hand, I could have rebelled and just gone and taken out loans if I really like felt that that was my calling. So then
Yeah.
that begs the question, was just that not strong enough, or was my need for safety and security did that outweigh my dreams of art,
Yeah.
and I went with the safe route. So I think both answers are right, but how
Hmm.
are you able to just keep powering through, and what tactics did you use to like rewrite your story?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I agree with you. I think that there's no right or wrong answer. I feel like we all end up where we need to be. And so, gosh, how did I mean, I think for me, I always, always knew I had like intuitive abilities. And by intuitive and intuition, like I don't mean like psychic abilities because I mean I definitely feel connected in that way, but I would say more so like I could just feel another person's energy very, very well, even when I was little and a child and I was a child. And so I feel like that has always been in the background. Like that is whether or not it's been loud and really, really present, or it's been like this really soft, like, you know, where I can barely hear it, but it's always been present. And so I feel like that to me has always been something that has guided me, whether I've known it or not, whether I've trusted it or not, is um that inner knowing and that inner voice. And again, I say even when I was a kid, because I think I had people around me that also were very intuitive, like my cousins or like my grandmother, like my aunt, they were very much about natural healing remedies and connected to earth. And so while I was raised by my parents, I grew up around this beautiful energy of like, um, you don't have to look outside you. And very much that was nurtured. Not all the time, but definitely during highlights of my life. And so I feel like if anything, there's moments where I would either have some type of inkling or feeling or like the hair standing up on my arms and my neck, and I was very connected to that. So I feel like that has been a constant. And like I said, whether I listen to it or not, it's been like rotating and ever changing. But that ultimately has been like just something within me that's just been there.
Mhm.
And then I would say to that point that I've either had experiences, people, or um, tools that have nurtured that have like honed that even more. Um, and then I've had art, I've had design. And so I've been so blessed with that being a medicine for me, like music, painting, drawing, like I've always been grounded in that piece too. And that being a real big part of my medicine and how I communicate with the world, or how I get things out of my body that don't necessarily should be there, and stress and anxiety for me really, I channel that through that, and it does, it alchemizes into something beautiful.
Mhm.
um and so those have always been like the the roots. And like I said, different times in my life I've chosen, like you, Laura, like not choosing to go to RISD. Like I've had moments like that where I was like, wow, if I would have taken that, like what, how
Mhm.
would my life have changed? But then I think about, whoa, like I mean, I don't know how like I don't know how like deep we're gonna go, but
Let's go
spiritually,
deep.
but let's go deep, because I do believe we have a contract when we get to earth. And I do believe that you know, whoever we think is our creator, like I do believe we know what we're getting into when we're here.
Mhm.
And you know, we've chosen the time in which we're here and alive right now. And so I that's always been a huge part of like of just like you know, not inspiration, that's the wrong word, but it's just been a huge like grounding factor as well, like something else I think about often as I go through, you know, experiences of great doubt or turbulation or like just, you know, reflection is like, wow, I chose to be here at this time. And instead of spending my time worrying about all the things I could have done, yeah, like what am I going to do in this moment and how am I going to show up in this moment? And so, and believe me, I have not always been in this place. I think it took me a real like breaking down. I was just listening to a song. Oh, it's a really old song, but in the line she goes, "There's beauty in the breakdown," and there was like I seriously, when I was I think about 30 something, I was in corporate America. I was like grinding, hustling, doing all the things, and I had a total breakdown, you know.
Was it around
And I
36?
Yeah, yeah, it was I think it was like around 35 or 36. It's like my son was a couple years, you know, he was like 5, I think. But yeah, it was totally that age. And I just I don't think I again, I don't think I could have been here without that. And so I, you know, now I look back at it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I had that experience, because I wouldn't have woken up if I didn't, and I would have still doing the thing. And so, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was
Beauty in a breakdown. I'm just
Yeah,
telling everyone that there's beauty in a breakdown.
there is. And the reason why I know the age is because I had the same breakdown at that same age. It's when we have our second nodal return and our Saturn square. And
Oh,
I just celebrated my 40th birthday this year. And
oh yay.
somebody asked me, what was the hardest year of your life? And I was like, 36.
Ooh. You're like,
I
that's
was
the
like,
first, but yeah.
I was like, I know exactly uh what year, what I was going through. Like it was the breakdown. It was basically
Yeah.
working in corporate America and realizing like your life isn't what you wanted it to be, because you're old
Mhm.
enough at that point where you have some life experience, but you're not older like 50s where you feel grounded enough in yourself. So
Yeah.
it's almost that moment, that like watershed moment where you're like, you either have to stay and like hate your life or make a change.
Yeah.
And like you said, because of the breakdown, it eventually led to the awakening and the spiritual growth and the healing. And without that, without the crashing and burning, would we
Yeah.
even get to this place? And I was sharing with you before we started recording was
Yeah.
that, I'm always fascinated by people who have like a linear timeline. Like they know that they want to
Mhm.
be a doctor, they go to med school, they right? And I just never operated
Yeah.
in that way. Like I'm a wanderer and like I just like take risks and fail and burn and you like go into debt, then like get a lot of money, like just like this chaotic.
Wait, have you done human design? I would love to know what your
Yeah.
profile is.
I'm a 3-5 sacral
Okay,
generator.
nice. Okay, we're very close. Same kind of profile. I'm a manifesting generator. And I feel like I'm an emotional center, which totally makes sense.
Mhm.
But um, yeah, linearity, it doesn't resonate to me. And it didn't, even when I did it, it didn't. But like that's all I knew. And I'm sure you too, Laura, like you're just I didn't know anything else. And so all these like offness, all these things in my body, all this anxiety, like to me were just, now looking back at it, I was like, oh, it was just really, I wasn't being who I was meant to be. It was really like
Mhm.
trying to trying to push that and not experiencing, yeah, and just like the pushing down, the self-sabotaging, because I think there was a lot of that for me, is sabotaging my own self, where now I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, but no, like I linearity, I'm just like, what? Like that's fascinating too to me, to meet people like that, you know.
It's so
Yeah, and
fascinating.
again, yeah.
And like most of my cousins are doctors and lawyers and accountants, and my sister is a nurse, so I'm always just like so fascinated. Like aren't you curious about other things in life? But like that's their journey. I
Yeah,
can't press upon my own beliefs on other people, but
yeah,
I'm always curious about like that, like the other way around, because they all think I'm a
yeah.
freak, which I am.
The best kind.
The best kind. Your bio is so beautiful, by the way, and you mentioned, you've worked in corporations with like Gap and Apple, and then
Yeah.
you speak about how your own journey led you to what you do now. Is that your journey, like the crashing and burning after corporate America?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any self-reflection tools. Like there was no, I think, and I did the best I could with what I had, right? And so I wasn't taught to journal, to self-care, to like, at that time I just didn't have any rituals that were like nourishing. And everything I had in my life was to get ahead in my job, and that my title, who I was there, what I produced was my identity. And so what ultimately ended up happening is that I so identified with that job that when it was good, like I was good, and when it was bad, I was bad. And so, and it was just stressful. Like what I ended up becoming was just this really high powered position, had a lot of people under me. So not only was I, identified with this job, but I was an intuitive that could feel everyone's feeling. And so it was just like an absorb fest of like everyone else's discontentment alongside with mine. and and again, just pushing it down, just pushing it down. And I would wonder, and then it was like, Laura, I got like a crazy, you know um chronic illness. And that was the last year I was there. I physically, like my body was like manifesting illnesses that I literally didn't know what to do. I didn't, what was happening with my body. And now looking back at it, like it was my body's way of telling me, like, Chris, like you are, you need to listen to us. And it was just a really dark time. And luckily, like I have substance abuse in my family. And so like, luckily that wasn't the issue. I mean, really it was food, honestly. And so for me, like, um, yeah, I really became the shell of a person that would react to everything. Right. And then I would tell myself, well, why am I doing this? Like I was so disconnected from my feelings, from what I was feeling, and how to express that. And so lots of pressure, lots of anxiety, lots of sleepless nights. And just when you're not sleeping, it's just like, I don't know about you, but it's just like it magnifies everything. It magnifies everything. And so yeah, it was definitely um a huge dark point in my life. And what ended up happening is one day, because I would have a 2-hour commute. Like I worked in San Jose, or I lived in San Jose and I worked in San Francisco, and I would have this commute, and I would literally, because I wasn't sleeping, I would fall asleep at the wheel. And so I'd be like swerving, catch myself swerving, and like, come back. And I'd leave really early in the morning, and there would be a point where the sun would be rising. And I don't know what happened, but I was going to fall asleep. And I didn't. I opened my window and I really, and Sin, it's funny because Syntheshay actually is the one that kind of had this insightful bit for me. I took a breath and I just, I don't know what it was, but I felt it. I felt the energy. I felt the present moment. It was this beautiful little window of feeling myself, feeling connected. And it just, it was there for like a minute. And I just was crying. I was crying so hard. I just remember, and I wasn't sad. It was just, I experiencing like just immense joy. And then it left. And Sin, you know, when I told this story, she's like, Kristina, it's like you had your first conscious breath. Like,
Mhm.
and I was like, yes, that's right. Like I did. Like I don't think I had been breathing out the entire time, you know, that year. And it was as when I had that experience, Laura, like it completely, once I had that, I went to work and it was like, like I didn't know what to do with myself. I just, I felt different. Everything was different and it wasn't, and I wanted that feeling again. And you should have seen me like when I went home that day, I was like trying to like breathe. It just, I looked so dumb, like so dumb. Oh, and yeah, I everything. I saw my environment. I saw like everything was different, and I couldn't go back. And all I wanted to do was experience that again. And that's when the universe, you know, just magically showed me a friend who is in the Goddess Wisdom Council, who, Anita through. And my friend Yadi, she was a spiritual coach, and she's a medicine woman. And she helped me for probably 2 years to just unpeel and unlayer and find all the wounds that were hiding. And it was hard. It was painful. I definitely, it wasn't easy. But I did the work on myself for close to 2 years, and her sessions are intense, but there, there's just so much beauty in knowing why. Like, if anything I could give people, the healing journey and just from witnessing people heal, and there's so much power in knowing why we do what we do, and how we have the power to change it, right? How we have the power to keep it in our lives and how we have the power to change it. And I didn't know that that was possible. I didn't even know that existed. So yeah, it was, Yadi was a huge mentor, friend, sister. Like, just I don't think I could have made it without her. But I hope, like, that's my hope for people whenever they're healing. I'm like, here's someone here, like I'm just like, it's true. It's like when you're in those depths, it's like you need people,
Yes.
and you need a community. You need and people that are going to support you. And because, Laura, I think where we kind of connect is like there's a lot of people in my family who think I am crazy. Like they're just, you are insane. Get your crystals, get your tarot out of my life. And I'm okay with that. Like before I would be such a people pleaser, and now I'm just like, I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. And but what counters that is have found a tribe, have found a tribe of people that, like, we love sharing, we love being vulnerable, we love healing together. And so again, I just think you need something to counteract that,
Totally.
and find your people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you're in the depths and it's like a dark night of the soul, you need somebody to shine the light at the end of the tunnel and remind you that there is a light and that you're not going to be in that for that long. It's just
Yeah.
ephemeral like everything else. And I agree with you, like healing by yourself is important, but like with people that can assist you and guide you. And also, what you were saying is like when you know why, you give yourself the compassion of like why you acted the way you did. And Resma
Yeah.
Mencken calls that like respect the protect. A lot of the things that
Mm,
we do, like the destructive behaviors, were
yeah.
to help us, like to protect us for
Yeah.
security. And so when you know that and why, then you know that like you can't just beat yourself up about it all the time.
Yeah. Because that's a circle, right? You're going to constantly go back to the same, like the shame, the all of that is going to propel you back to the same spot. It really doesn't break the cycle. And I think the only thing that really makes the healing journey just propel so like fast is the idea that you can be vulnerable and that you can mother yourself through that. I mean, that was a huge process. And what Yadi taught me is mothering myself,
Mhm.
because I was so stuck in like, well, I don't have the mom, that like that
Mhm.
I would, and really what you come to find is that you can have those wounds and have that mother wound, and still you can be the mother who you wanted. And so mothering myself has been a huge piece of the work, and especially around those like deep-seated wounds, right? And with Yadi we were able to identify those, and understand, what am I going to do differently. And again, just like you said, once you know why you've done that and what happens when that wound shows up and that cycle shows up, then you could start to choose differently. And so that's the process in which we really looked at my healing, is like, okay, what am I going to do differently when I'm in those moments of like self-judgment,
Mhm.
self-sabotage, all those things, right? Because they're natural. They're the part of our psyche and the mind, and what we start to do is just like exercise to constantly come back to be reminded, and to initiate that new way of thinking, that new way of being. So
Mhm.
super powerful stuff, man, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
I know. Yeah, can't blame my parents anymore for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Can't be in that anymore.
Yeah.
God.
Let's talk about your art then. And I think that's why
Oh yeah.
you could really feel like when you've been through your own journey and you could recognize in other people that they've also met that darkness because it resonates through your work. And when you
Mm,
step into that journey, you can help people like walk the path with them, and you do that in such a beautiful way through your art. So what is
mm,
your creativity process like? How are you able to bring like your feelings onto words and colors and images?
yeah. Gosh, I mean, I started that account, by the way, the social media, and I started the whole concept of Yoo Mee. Yoo Mee was a word that was actually an indigenous word, of my grandmother's tribe, and I did not know this. It came to me in a dream, and it was like Yoo Mee, and I was like, oh, I love that name. And then I realized, as I was researching my grandmother's, history and the Yaqui tribe, like Yoo Mee is actually the word for the people. And I was like, oh, of course
Oh,
it is. Of course it is. Like, yes. And I did. I wanted that connection, and I wanted that, and I knew that whatever studio I had, because I wanted to design, but I wanted to do it on my terms. And so that's what I ended up doing, is having a design studio where I would take on clients. And so that account literally was a starting point of that. And that became my like my healing journey. Like I wrote everything on that page. I don't think when I first started, like I look back at some of the posts, I'm like, oh man, Kristina, you seriously had no filter, did you? Oh, but no one was watching. I had like, two people following me, so it was great. But I look back and I'm like, wow, like, and some of the things I'm like, wow, this is like, you are good. So, half and half. But no, I created that as an outlet for me, because I was doing these jobs at the time before I had the design studio, I was doing these jobs at the time that I was like, oh my God, like these don't inspire me. And so I wanted like, and one of the things that Yadi and I, talked about was like a love project for yourself. Like do something that's just creatively for yourself
Mhm.
and no expectations. And that's what we did. And so I started Yoo Mee and I started to incorporate my art in there. And I love a fucking quote. Oh, sorry, Laura. I didn't know if we could
It's
curse. You could
totally
take that
fine.
out. But I love a quote. This is how you can tell I'm relaxed. It's like, but I love a quote. It's seriously like they've inspired me, authors, poets, like, oh my God, like I can't write like that. And so like when I find tidbits, I'm just like, oh, but I started to incorporate into my art and yeah, it just kind of grew from there. And as far as like my design process, I mean, I'd say it definitely has evolved. Like I taken what I've learned from corporate and I was like trying to apply it to my clients and I'm just like, what am I doing? And a friend of mine, she gave me Kim Kron's. Don't know if you know who she is, but
Yeah,
she's a wonderful illustrator.
love her
And she
stuff.
gave me her tarot, yeah, her tarot deck. And she at the time she came out with the archetypes deck, and I was like, oh, what is this? And I've heard of archetypes, and definitely in high school, the concept of archetypes, and I just loved how she had put it in the context of like a healing, a space of healing, and a space of knowing yourself, and that it was just these beautiful illustrations around it. And so I really got curious. I'm like, well, what if I applied that to the lens of like what I do with clients, which is branding, social media, all of that, right? Is that I want them to have their own voice. I want people to be able to show up fully as themselves. And so I started bringing in the archetypes work, and we've used that as a platform of like how I design for them
Mhm.
is through their archetypes. And so, like for example, like one of my archetypes is the crone. And if you know the crone energy, it's like, it's kind of like the wise woman, right? The woman that the healer. And so, a lot of my work is through that archetype. But I also have like other archetypes, right? And so there's this beautiful intersection that happens when you start to layer those pieces together, because again, like to say an artist is just one thing, that's like the death of creativity to me. And so when I'm really working with people, I really try to encompass the layered pieces of them, the multiness of them, because I believe that we're multifaceted. um, and so, and maybe that's what's with the linearity. Maybe those people don't know, like they're multifaceted, but I really do believe that in my heart. And so it's been phenomenal, like working that way, working with people, like it's just been so just beautiful to birth, see this idea, see
Mhm.
if it'll work, and it actually really resonating with people. So I would say that would be my creative process. And as far as like, work, I'm so, this year is just so for me about collaborating with people, partnering with people, people that believe the same things I do, as far as like community, heart-centered healing, like I just BIPOC, spaces of women of color, like mostly those are my clients, is which has been amazing. And so yeah, I just really want to nurture those areas, and those areas seem to be where um, I learn, too, and I grow from that. So yeah, that's kind of the process, and where I find the most joy.
I love that you just casually put this Instagram account up and like there's famous people like following you and I see your little like artworks on famous people's grids and I'm like, does Christina know that Jessica Alba just like reposted her work? No big
I
deal.
know,
No big
I
deal.
know, but it's cool. It's probably better that way, right? Well, actually, I have to say, my friend Diana, oh my God, she's so beautiful. I met her through Instagram, and we've exchanged work. She's a poet. She's amazing. But she'll sometimes tag me, and it's so cute because she's just like, she's on top of everything. I'm like, I love you. Like, you let me know who has, 'cause I don't really know. And
Oh,
so
really?
yeah,
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
gonna start tagging you now.
do it, Laura, because
So like
I
like she has like how many, like 10 million followers? I'm like, damn, Kristina, like get your bag.
I know. I need to be better. Seriously, I really am looking for a social media person. So social media manager. So hey, if you're a social media manager out there, that's on my next to do because I just can't keep track, and it's overwhelming, Laura. I'm gonna put it out there. Like, I love all the love, but it's also like I want to respond to everyone, and when I can't, I feel horrible. So
Yeah.
social media manager, that's what I probably need.
So don't take it personally, anybody, because I actually had to meet Kristina in person to get connected with her and see her face.
Please, guys, I love you all. You guys are amazing. I mean, honestly, it's so beautiful when I am able to check my DMs and people leave me the most. I mean, granted, I get haters for sure. I'm not gonna like pretend like that doesn't exist, but oh, the people that like send me messages of like just how much the work means, like it. I swear, I marinate in that. I marinate in it. I really do.
So what I'm hearing you say is you just really believed in what you were doing because it fulfilled a greater purpose of helping people, and you just put it out there, and the feedback of people is like confirmation that you're in alignment with your soul's purpose. So what do you do now? Like what is your self-growth process to like keep
Mm.
that confidence going and believing in yourself? Because you're so humble.
No, you're so sweet. Well, I have a lot of experiences that humble me, Laura. So let's just throw that out there. No, like, oh, honestly, like if I come from a place of curiosity, that has been like my growth. Like, finding things that like I want to do. Like, not, I'm a manifesting generator, so in human design, if people don't know human design, please go look at it. It's so beautiful. It's just like, to me, a layer of astrology. Like, it's honestly been such great like insight for me. But I'm a manifesting generator, and what that means is that I cannot, and I can't, it's a detriment to my soul to be on something for too long. and and all my life I was like, oh my gosh, Kristina's like lazy,
Mhm.
Kristina's like this. And it wasn't like necessarily I was lazy, it was just this like loss of interest. And so I'm really good at the beginning, I'm really innovative, I'm like this like total machine, and then I need to move on. And so for the longest time I didn't understand how to nurture that within me and how to not feel guilty, because that's not what we're taught, right? And so I think, if anything, I'm coming to know myself more, and the more I know myself, the more I'm allowing myself permission to show up authentically. And so that's really the growth. And I think that's like the biggest push for me, is just to teach other creatives how to allow themselves to be who they are creatively, and to also have these rituals, these tools that I've learned that can also just help them with like exhaustion, burnout, all those things, right? Because we still live in this world of this physical world.
Mhm.
And so it's like, how do you navigate that? And so that's really the calling now, is just to like teach what you know, like, or teach what you're really passionate about. And I'm really, really passionate about this heart-centered um, creation, being able to create from that space. Because when I create from that space, there's literally no lack at all. And when I wasn't creating from that space, it was like, I need to get, I need to be, I need to buy, I need to fill. And so yeah, that's really the kind of mission now. It's like, how do I teach people? How do I get to a space where I feel comfortable hearing my own voice on the radio, and like in front of a camera. That's my work because again, I'm so good at like being behind the scenes, y'all. So um, yeah, that's my growth right there is getting uncomfortable, you know? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Learning my human design gave me so, and my astrology gave me so much permission to just be myself. And I actually
Yeah.
just posted an Instagram video today about how, like, when you keep fighting against who you really are and what you need energetically, you're literally fighting against the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not
Yep.
in the flow. And it could
Yep.
just be so much easier if you just honored yourself and honored how you're supposed to be. Like, I think sacral, like I generate a lot of energy from my sacral chakra, which is
Mm,
like I need to be satisfied with what I'm doing. And if it
yeah.
doesn't bring me joy, then I'll like literally just like time travel out of my body. Like I'll stop listening, I'll stop doing, just like I I need to get energy from the things that I love. And
Yeah.
if I had known that, you know, it's an ever unfolding journey of learning about yourself. But if I had known that from like, you know, way before and honored that, then I wouldn't have wasted so much time working in corporate America. Like, you know, it's like, what?
I totally hear you. Same. Same. I'm like, wow, I wasted a lot of years. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I didn't waste, you can't look at it like that. Oh, but yeah, I totally feel that, Laura. In my sacral, in my root chakra.
Yeah, in all the chakras.
Yeah, my goodness.
Ah, so just a few more questions, just out of my own curiosity, but what's
Yeah.
really inspiring you right now? And it could be
Mm,
anything, it doesn't have to be spiritual.
yeah. Gosh, what's inspiring me right now? Oh, honestly, I would say community. Being in community. And so I'm in about, this is like embarrassing to say, but I'm in about like 6 different circles. So it's like,
So am
and so for
I.
anyone, yeah, right. And so just for people that don't, circles are like just gatherings, groups. Some of them I meet in person, some of them are online, but honestly, being in community, being in circle inspires the shit out of me. Like it feeds my soul, and I think it's like this deep need and level of hating casual conversation, right? And needing something deeper and to go deeper, and being vulnerable, showing up, whatever it is that day, being just seen, right? You're also seen in those circles. And so like I have a mastermind class I'm taking with Nisha Mobley, who's amazing. And I have a couple other circles that we meet bi-weekly. Um, it's just, oh my God, it's just everything. And it honestly keeps me motivated, keeps me on track, keeps me honest.
Mhm.
Like I could really not be honest with myself. And so I would say that that is definitely something that is inspiring, is just being in circle with people. Yeah.
Mhm. Same. My sister was like, Laura, you just really don't know how to have like a 1 minute surface level conversation because I'll meet somebody and my sister's a Virgo, so she doesn't even speak
Mhm.
sometimes, she just observes. And
Yeah.
my top three questions are, what are your big three? What are your childhood traumas, and what are your dreams?
That's amazing. And I'm going to take that. I'm going to totally take that with me today.
She's like,
Oh.
coming on too strong.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's so funny how uncomfortable people get too, right? You're just like, oh, like you're not used to this.
Yeah, but you know, it's such a good filter for me to see like who I want to engage in. Because
Hmm.
if you can't engage at that level, then we're not meant to be friends. Because
Yeah,
like I feel like I need to get deep really quickly. And then like
yes,
later on, you know, many, many months down our friendship, we could talk about bullshit like, you know, the
yeah,
Kardashians or something. But like I need to
yes,
know right away that I could feel safe around you. And so I
Mm.
need to know your childhood traumas.
Oof, that's a good one. That's such a beautiful way of saying, like, I want to feel safe around you. That's so such a beautiful way of, yeah, explaining that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. No, I can't do the weather. I can't do like,
The
what do you do
weather,
for
oh
a
my
living? Like,
God.
oh, yeah, no,
Especially in New
thank you.
York, when people complain about the weather, I'm like, you live here, don't you get it? It changes like every hour. Like,
Yeah, come on, come
come
on.
on,
You lived here for
people.
10 years. Yeah, no, same. Uh,
Okay, last question. It's not really a question, but just more of like a statement to the universe. Like, what are you calling in for yourself and your business?
oh my gosh, this is so easy because I always ask for signs. I'm cheesy and I
Me
love
too.
like, oh my God, like it's such a big thing for me. And so I do. I feel like we're constantly communicating with the universe and whether we know it or not, right? Whether we're in the present moment to realize it. And so it was so funny. I just went on a retreat and the first day you can get a massage, a facial, or like a face scrub. And I was like, oh, I want a massage, you know? And then and it was just such a beautiful place. And I just dropped so deep into myself in the moment, waiting for the person to come out. And I was like, oh, universe, like what is it? What is it that I want to feel today? What is it that I'm marching towards, right? It was just like this intention, like what is my intention? And so like she gets me and she's the most beautiful like soul ever. She leads me. She's like, what room would you like? And I was like, and I don't know why, I like just pointed the straight. And above the room was freedom. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, of course. Like,
Mhm.
and so yeah, like it's so, I mean, being free, being having freedom to create the things I want to create, to be around the people I want to be around, to have the relationships I want to have. Like freedom to me is a big, big word right now. And really it just means like to be fully embodied in myself and who I am supposed to be here right now on this earth. And so that's really like my intention, my goal for the year is like, how do I become more free? How do I become more me? And so, yeah, yeah.
And so it is. I
Ah.
think that's such a beautiful way to end this beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Christina. You are a guiding
Mm,
light. I'm so, so grateful to know you.
me too. And I want to see you again in real life. So I'm just going to put that out there.
And we're going to put that out there.
Yes, done.